Hello, everybody. It's Mike. Happy New Year, everybody. Where I am, it is January 2nd as I do this. Probably if you're on the other side of the globe, it's January 1st. So, Happy New Year. So, in honor of New Year's, what are you willing to do to completely change the creation of your life and your relationships? So, I want to share with you a really powerful understanding. Not necessarily the easiest thing to change, but if you can understand this concept about our past narrative and how our past narrative controls us, then you'll be that much further ahead. And the reality is, if we have the ability, in every single moment, we can change every single moment. If we have the ability to create a different narrative of who we are. So, in the computer that I'm running right here, I've got software which I stream with, and so in order to do anything, you use a program. Program is the narrative. It tells the computer what to do. And you have programs as well. So the illusion that we all have that we have complete power of choice over everything that we do and everything that we feel is an illusion. In fact, speaking for myself, I walk around in my head all the time with all kinds of narratives of who I am and all of that. And I'm in a unique position right now because I'm single, so I live alone, and I have all kinds of freedom to do what I want, so I don't have to go to work and deal with people at work. So I don't have a lot of people in my life telling me what to do or how to feel. But yet I walk around feeling as though, lots of times I'll have to catch myself, but I'll walk around feeling as though somebody's got it in for me. Somebody has something negative there, that I won't realize it, but there will be this feeling that I'm fighting with somebody. And then I'll stop and I'll say, who is associated with this feeling? And I'll realize that there's nobody in my life, that it's really still the feeling that I carry with me from my abusive brother, or my mom or my dad, both of whom are dead. I have no contact with my brother, so he can't be the one in my life. I'll watch television or something, and there will be some conflict going on, and then I'll turn the TV off and I'll walk around and I'll be feeling like I'm in conflict with somebody. And I'm realizing it's just because that there's this narrative in my head of who I am this, I am that. And what has been most freeing is to be able to hear other people's experience of me, as opposed to my own experience of myself. And other people's experience of me is completely different. And that's because of how I've lived my life. One of the most important things that you can gain out of 12-step work, as well as group therapy, is that you learn to take different actions that could be sometimes completely, totally antithetical to your feelings and your impulses. So everybody, not just borderlines or codependents, everybody is ruled by their impulses and their narrative. Now, if you grew up in a home where your parents loved you, they nurtured you, they mirrored you, you have that narrative. You have that loving parent, I forget what Freud called it, but you have that parent in your head that's constantly telling you who you are. And if you had parents that ingrained in you, that programmed you to feel empowered, to feel individuated, then you're going to be walking around with a narrative in your head that I like myself, I am a good person, people like me, I am successful. Even when you get into problems with somebody, and that problem, that conflict is unresolved, when you're not around that person, you're just going to still go around taking actions as though people like you, you are successful, and all of these things. It's because of your inbuilt narrative. So if you grew up in a dysfunctional home, and everybody watching me, if you're on here because you're either a ex-partner of a borderline or cluster B, or you're borderline yourself, you have a negative narrative in your head telling you whatever it was that either you were outright told or whatever the energetic real message was. In the case of the borderline, on the extreme end, the borderline is told they don't deserve to exist. They're just the fact that they were neglected as an infant. That is enough of a message, and that message can be enough to completely, as we've talked about in the past, it can kill you if you're an infant. But the energetic message is that you don't deserve to exist. And then that narrative becomes most important and feels your life. The thing about your narrative isn't that it's optional. It's not like changing the channel on the television. You don't have that option. The narrative, whoever you are, codependent or borderline, if that narrative in your head says that you don't deserve to exist, then that is your life. Your entire identity and your life is fused with that. When anybody comes along that counter indicates that gives you the opposite of that, then you will want to change the narrative. You will get angry with them for telling you you're a good, lovable person. This is, I'm talking to everybody here. And so this is where projection comes in. It's with the borderline, it's an obvious one, it's an extreme one. When you love the borderline and you successfully connect to them and you successfully love them, their narrative jumps in and says that they're not worthy of love, and that is who I am, and I am blaspheming by accepting the idea that I'm lovable, so therefore I must kill the blasphemer. The person that's sitting there with a smile on their face, rubbing your back, telling you how much they love you. You must kill that person, even though you like what they're doing, because it goes against the narrative, and the narrative is the law. The narrative is your life. The narrative is what keeps you in your unconscious mind connected to your parent and getting their love. And it doesn't matter that their love, in quotes, is abuse. If you associate abuse with love, that becomes the most important thing. Being loved. It's not rational. This is, people keep wanting to ask questions. Why do the borderline do this? Why do they say that? And I'm like, who cares? They're not operating rationally. You're never going to figure it out. The unconscious mind is not rational. The unconscious mind is a toddler. So you have a narrative. And the question is, what does it take for you to change the narrative within you, to change the program? And that is not something that is done easily. I can say all you have to do is change your internal program, but that's not how it works. And unfortunately, people, especially people who really follow the law of attraction, think that if they just say a lot of conscious positive affirmations, that will override their programming, and it never does. Because whatever you say in your conscious mind has to line up with your unconscious programming. And if you are telling yourself, I'm a beautiful person and I'm lovable and I am successful and people like me, but your internal program says the opposite, every time you say something positive like that, your internal program will veto it. And even if you can spend 6 hours a day on the edge of your bed saying, I'm wonderful, I'm happy, and life is good, at some point you have to stop and eat and go to the bathroom and go to sleep, even if you spent all day doing that. And so once you stop doing that, your unconscious programming comes in and vetoes every single one of those positive affirmations, and you wake up the next day and nothing's changed. The borderline, you've seen this. The borderline does this every time. If you're with a borderline, this is what they do. They meet you, they project onto you their childhood, their infantile fantasy of parental love, which means they love bomb you. You think, oh my gosh, I found the perfect person. I can't believe I've never had this much love before. This person sees me with all of my defects and they love me. So as the codependent, you're getting everything that the borderline is projecting onto you, because the borderline is projecting onto you what they want for themselves also, which is just unconditional, immediate, total connection on the deepest level and love on the deepest level. So everybody's in heaven during that. But then you respond and you give love back because you find you're full of love also. And you know, like many codependents, you dream about somebody who will let you love them, right? So here comes this perfect, innocent little borderline that lets you love them, so you think. You love bomb them back, and then for no logical reason whatsoever, they attack you fiercely. They devastate you, they eviscerate you in a split second. That's their programming. They can't operate outside of their narrative, because their narrative is that they are unworthy of love. That's what they were told. That's what they were imprinted with that. And that, as painful as it is, they hold on to that, because if they don't, they completely lose their identity, what little identity they have. And they, on an unconscious level, feel as though they're killing the person that's keeping them alive. So that internal parent that is abusive and horrific, demeaning, devaluing, is their source of life. And so their identity is connected to that. And so we can see that. That's the example. They can't simply turn the narrative off. That's what makes it a mental illness. Because if they were able to go, wow, I'm having all of these really horrible feelings, but this person doesn't deserve that, even though I feel like attacking them, I'm going to turn around and love them, we would be happy. We'd stay with them. It wouldn't matter. If they were able to talk to us about, I'm having that thing happen and go on in my head, and we would hold them and take care of them, say, it's okay, I still love you. Be like, gosh, I really hate this right now, but I know you didn't do this, so I'm going to stay here. That would create a beautiful, intimate relationship, and you could heal each other. They can't do that. They can't do that because the narrative demands that they kill the blasphemer. You blaspheming them by loving them. Now, if you're a codependent, first off, you understand, you're nodding your head to everything I'm saying because you were there, and how sad it is that the borderline does that. And oh my God, if only I could convince them, except that you do the exact same thing. The more codependent you are, the more abusive you are. The more codependent you are, the more sabotaging and destructive you are. The more that you project onto others. I've done 2 videos now on projection. And you know, I think it should be clear, because you can see the examples that I gave of projection, of people projecting onto me things that I did not say and did not think and did not intend. And it doesn't matter, because I've done 2 videos where I've shown them, at least in my opinion, proven to them that that's your projection. I didn't do that. I didn't say that. I wasn't thinking that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because it's more important to them. Their identity is fused with the narrative. And when nobody's around, that narrative is going on all the time. You want to know why do I keep getting into abusive relationships? Because the narrative doesn't stop just because you're not in a relationship. People have said, I don't know what's worse. People who've been out of their borderline relationship for 5-10 years, and they say, I don't know what's worse, being with the borderline or being alone. Because just because you're alone doesn't mean that narrative isn't going off all the time, but it's confusing because you feel worthless, you feel attacked, you feel devalued, you feel horrible, you feel unloved, you feel all of these horrible things, and there's nobody around to justify that by being there. And so you create the very scenario that you say you hate because, again, the narrative is your identity. And if you did something different from the narrative, you would feel as though you're going to die. I remember when I was 15, I was a little kid. Like, I was little and skinny. No, I was little and skinny. It wasn't until I got, 15 or 16 that I shot up to barely average height, 5'9". And, now I'm 200 pounds and I got muscle on me. But, as a teenager and a young adult, I was just skin and bone. I was a skinny little kid. And anyway, that's neither here nor there. But see, there's my programming. Did you hear that? There's my narrative. So we were driving around and the car in front of us slowed down in the middle of the highway, and the passenger door flies open and this woman goes rolling out the door. Somebody's pushing her out the door while the car is moving. And of course, we're shocked at this, teenagers, and we slam on the brakes and we go out to, my God, what's going on? And the car drives away, and then we stop the car, we get out to help the poor woman who is in absolute shock. She is shaking and she's in absolute shock. And I was so frightened, it just had such a strong impact on me. And then the car above, slows down and stops and then backs up. Now I'm furious because I see what just happened here. I see that some seemingly innocent woman just got pushed out of a moving vehicle, on the side of a road. There's a cliff there too. She could have fallen off a cliff. And I'm standing there and I'm breathing, and of course this adult comes out and he's twice my size and he looks over me and he says, "You don't know anything about blah, blah, blah," and, it's threatening my life and all that kind of stuff. Obviously a very abusive guy. And then, thankfully, because it's a highway, a bunch of other cars stop and a bunch of other adult males get out and thankfully get between him and me so that that guy didn't end up hurting me. And then you got 3 or 4 adult guys talking to this guy, "Come on, try that with me. Try it with somebody your own size." And of course the guy backs down. Everybody. Now this was before cell phones and everything like that. So, if in order for this woman to get help, somebody has to take her in the car and take her to the police station, right, which was just down the road. And so all the adults and I was there, also, and we're all crowding around this woman saying, "You're okay. You don't have to get back in the car with him." Because at this point he's telling her to get back in the car. "Get your ass back in the car." And she's still. And so everybody says, "You don't have to go back with him. I'll take you to the police station. What do you want to do? I'll take you wherever you want to go. You do not have to." There's 3 or 4 adult vehicles that are saying this to this woman. There's women there too. So if she had chosen to, she could have said, "I'm going to go with you and your wife and let's go to the police station." And I'm thinking that's obviously what she's going to do. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't say a word to anybody. And after however long this was, it felt like a long time. It was probably 15 or 20 minutes. Can you guess what happened? She got back in the car with the guy that pushed her out on a moving highway next to a cliff. Her narrative, she could not do anything. I mean, there was no shortage of evidence around her that if she wanted to, she could say, "Oh my God, I'm going to stop this. There are 20 people that will go to the police station with you, that will show up in court to say, I was there. He pushed her out a moving vehicle." She had everything that she needed to change the narrative. Because if you had talked to her beforehand, no doubt in my mind, she would have given you the narrative that you don't understand. If I could just get away from him, what he's doing to me. Nope, she got right back in, and none of us could do anything. And we all stood there. It was like a movie. And they got in the car, and he sped off. And there's 20 people looking in shock and not saying anything. Like, what just happened here? This is what you do if you're, obviously if you're a borderline, but you do this if you're a codependent. And you will destroy anybody that comes to threaten your narrative. You don't believe me? Watch the 2 videos that I just did. And both of those guys are back on. This is going to be the last time I reference them. So if you're getting tired of this, so am I. But let's take a look here what these guys have to say. So they're now banded together, and they're reinforcing each other's narratives, and they're continuing to say outright complete falsehoods. I mean, that are just absolutely completely false. Because they need, in order for their life, I don't take it personally because I know their life depends on this narrative. And I'm threatening that narrative, and I'm giving them an opportunity to change the narrative and change their reactions to it. And give them what they want, which is what they want is a connection with me. But they're wanting me to do it on their terms. So I'll just briefly look at it. Let's see, where'd they go? So yeah, I talked about Jason last time. And, I did, if you remember, Jason had said, just heaped abuse upon me. Called me all kinds of horrible names, and I didn't care about him, and I wasn't kind enough to him, and that I demeaned him, and all these other things. And he had said that he didn't give me a specific. I asked for a context, and he wouldn't give me one. And he said that he had asked me a question, and that I flipped out on him, and attacked him, and abused him, and all that. And then I remembered. Because, when both of these guys, I went, what, that does happen sometimes. Sometimes I do misunderstand people's questions. Sometimes I do go off half-cocked before I think it through. That does happen, and I am working on that. So I want to know if that really does happen. I'm happy to look at it and acknowledge it. And it happens on my other channel all the time. And, sometimes if I'm aware of it, I acknowledge it. But that wasn't the case with him. Jason had asked me, why is my borderline ex trying to connect with me? And I said to him, first time, I said, who cares? She's a borderline. She's going to hurt you. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve you to want to know, to try and figure out what she's thinking. That's your unconscious desire to get her back. And I said, that's not going to help you. So forget about what she thinks. He got upset at that, and he said, I'm asking for a reason, and man, you don't understand. You should listen to what people say, and then whatever. And then weeks later, he asked me the same question, and I responded exactly the same as I did before. Who cares why she wants to get back together with you? She's going to hurt you. It doesn't serve you. I'm not going to co-sign this. You're wanting her back. Wake up. He didn't like that either. A few weeks later, I responded to somebody else similarly. He found the whole thing about what a horrible person I am. You guys know all about it. So he says, he says whatever he says. The other guy accused me of saying, I'll just read it. He says, it wasn't even him coming at me about the phrasing of my question that was the problem. It was that he insinuated that I implied I am too good for videos, that I no longer need them, which is just false. Just absolutely false. And I said, go back and watch it. In fact, I played it, and that's not at all what I said. What I did say, I was honest. I said, because I didn't understand the question, but what I said was, hey, if you don't need to watch the videos, don't watch them. And I meant it, and I mean it now. When you no longer need to watch these videos, please get on with your life. I love that you do watch them, and you're welcome to watch them forever. But it's okay if you don't. And I meant it then, and I mean it now. But his narrative is that somebody somewhere shamed him in some way that made him feel that way. They said, oh, you're too good for this, or you're too good for this family, or who knows what it was. Something along those lines. Either they outright said that, or he got that feeling. That's now part of his narrative. That's now part of his narrative, and that if I do anything to get between him and his narrative, he's going to come after me. He's going to call me a bully. He's going to call me an asshole. He's going to call me condescending. He's going to call me abusive. The Jason guy comes back after saying all these horrible things about me, and he calls me a condescending dick. He calls me an asshole. He goes on and on and on. I'm not going to read it. You can read it for yourself. And none of it's true. None of it, especially in Jason's case. In Jason's case, it wasn't that I misunderstood his question. I just refused to answer it because I want to help him. But that's not going to be enough. He's that girl on the side of the road that's been kicked out of the car. And I'm saying, do you want to get in my car and go to the police? And his narrative is saying, get your ass back in this car. Get your ass back in this car right now. And he does. And so what we do, because I'm pointing out both of these guys because I've done both of these things. And there's a good chance I'll do it again in the future. Now, thankfully, this usually only comes out in group therapy. And that's the great thing about group therapy. If you don't know what group therapy does, is it reflects your family dynamic. Not in and of itself, it's just the nature of it regresses you, and you respond to people out of your unconsciousness. And that's how you know, by the way, that's how you know you were the good therapist as well, is if you find yourself regressed and projecting and responding to the therapist in that way. And then the job of the therapist is to be able to go, do you see how that's your projection? Let's look at that. And then you have to learn to trust the therapist, obviously, and that go in and let them, with you, look at how you're projecting. And then you get to look at what happened, what the programming was. So both of these guys had that opportunity, but I also know, based on what I'm reading here, which I'm not going to spend time, you can read their comments if you want. Neither of these guys are in any kind of help. No therapy, no 12-step, probably no meditative practice. So those three things are important because, again, remember, when you get into a relationship with a borderline, you're getting bit. And the virus or the bacterial infection, the borderline zombie virus gets in you. And it doesn't go away just because you're out of the relationship. You've now been programmed. That's now part of your narrative. Because the attachment, can you see the attachment? When you're a little kid, you attach to your mother. When the borderline comes along, they remind us of mom, and we attach to them in the same way. So your attachment to your mom is your life, and it's more important than anybody coming along saying, hey, your mom's abusing you, little boy. Little boy's going to say, stop attacking my mom. That's my mom you're talking about. Stop it. So when there's, both Jason and Comeback Kid, I'm telling you guys that just listen to what I'm saying. See if you can put your whatever you think about me down for just 1 second. The part of you that wants to get past the narrative. Here's my prediction for you. If you don't get help, I'm not going to be the last person that you have this experience with. There are going to be people in your life that do care about you, that do want what's best for you, and are reaching out to connect and be there for you. And you are going to sabotage it. Why? The question is, why would they do that? And why have I done it? Why have you done it? And the reason is because besides everything else that we've said, the unconscious mind doesn't have an off switch. There's no time. There's no yesterday or tomorrow. There's only today, which means that whatever abuse, whatever neglect you experienced as an infant or as a kid, it's going on 24/7. This is what I was saying earlier. Like for me, I'm in this unique situation. I'm pretty much alone all day unless I want to go out and hang out or do something. But I pretty much am by myself all day. So when those things come up, when I find myself feeling like, wait a minute, why do I feel like I'm in conflict with somebody? Why do I feel like there's somebody angry with me? There's nobody in my life that even remotely has that. I don't have any conflicts with anybody. You know, my brain will go to something like my landlords. My landlords are about to evict me. And they're not. They like me. They just happen to be, you know, some things that I can project parental things onto because they own the house I live in, which of course I'm paying rent for. But my unconscious doesn't know that. My unconscious sees them as parents, even though they're my age, right? And so my brain has to find a way to experience that ongoing, unresolved conflict with the parents. And so when we're not conscious of that, what ends up happening is that the feeling is inside of you. This is exactly what borderlines do, by the way. The feeling is inside of them, waiting to come out. They feel it. And then the first opportunity where they can justify it. For the borderline, you look at your watch. And that's enough for them to feel completely rejected. And you're about to break up with them and you hate them. You're like, I swear to you, I just looked at my watch. I was actually thinking about how beautiful you are, and I looked at my watch as I was thinking that. Whatever you think I was just thinking didn't happen. Doesn't matter what you tell them, they won't hear you. They sabotage the connection that you're trying to give to them. So for Jason and Comeback Kid, me responding in whatever way, in Jason's way, you know, he had an agenda of wanting me to co-sign, get into the drama of what his soon-to-be ex-wife, why she was hoovering him, and I didn't do that. And so that angered him. But it angered him because if he had listened to what I said, he would have started to heal. He would have started to distance himself from that narrative. But that narrative is his life. And he also needs to recreate not being seen, not being heard, not being valued. If you listen to both of them, they have two different things. The only thing they have in common is they're both angry with me. But they have two different things. In Jason's case, he feels unseen and condescended to because I didn't acquiesce to his demand that I answer his question. And I gave him another opportunity. The Comeback Kid, he doesn't care that I didn't understand his question. What bothers him is that I won't admit that what has he said? That I insinuated. I didn't even say it. According to him, I didn't say it. I implied that he was too good for my videos. Because I won't admit that, because it didn't happen. But for him, because I won't admit that, that's now an excuse. So now I know what happened to him as a kid. And so he's replaying, again, like I said, somebody implied something that, you know, used to shame him with that kind of interaction. And so because those people aren't there in his life right now, and I'm this guy he's talking to, that's feelings inside of him, and I actually do say to him, no, if you don't want to watch my videos, don't. And he doesn't hear that. He hears, if you think you're too good for my videos, then you should go somewhere else. And when I tell him, no, that's not what I meant, that's not good enough for him. Why? Not because there's a possibility I could be right, but because the narrative is so strong, he can't let go of it. His life depends on it. How do I know? Because I've been there. So many times I'm looking back 20 years in relationships with women, and I've gotten some bug up my ass about something, and I'm coming at them, you did this and you did that, and they'll apologize. Whether they did it or not is immaterial. They apologize and they go, I'm so sorry. I'll make sure in the future that I don't. And then I don't let it go. And then afterwards they'll say, I apologize to you. And I say, you did? I say, yeah. And I'll go, I don't even remember that. That was because I had to relive whatever devaluation I thought they were doing to me. And them apologizing to me wasn't enough. So there's nothing I'm ever going to be able to say to the comeback kid or to Jason that will ever be enough, even if I can prove to them. Even if 90 other people, like on that street corner, saying, that guy's abusive, get in my car, let's go to the police. Even if 90 other people say to Jason, that's not what happened, or to the comeback kid, that's not what he said at all. You misheard him. It won't matter. Because they still have that unresolved childhood experience that they need to validate. And so this is, we go around looking, I remember when I was early in recovery, I remember feeling like, because I was angry and hurt all the time. I would just walk around just so full of anger and hatred and pain. And I was upset at everything and everybody. And I had to come to the conclusion that, it's not the world's fault that I'm in pain. It's not that guy's fault who's in front of me, pulling out nickels and dimes in the line at the grocery store. It's not his fault that I'm in pain. He's just getting rid of his change, whatever it is. So Jason and comeback kid, I don't take anything you're saying personally because I understand. It's not, I could get upset and get angry with you and do all the things you're accusing me of doing. It would be really easy for me to do that. But I don't need to. It's not your fault. Like the abuse. Seriously, the abuse. Asshole, dick, douchebag, condescending, all the horrific. By the way, Jason and comeback, if you're not aware of it, you're being very abusive to me. You're being really personal and abusive. And to my knowledge, I've never abused you. I've never called you any names. But that abuse, that's definitely something my brother would have done. Like Jason, you are acting exactly like my abusive older brother. He would do that. He would find a reason. In fact, he used to get me in a corner because he was bigger than me. He would get me in a corner and he would just harass me and harangue me and tell me. And Jason's doing that. Jason wants to get me in a corner and do that. So does comeback kid. He wants to get me in a corner and he wants to get me to get on my knees and beg for forgiveness because you're right. I insinuated you were too good. It's not true. So, how do we change the narrative? How do we change the narrative? The only way I know how to do it is the three things I've always said, and those guys aren't doing it, which is why they're so angry at me. Therapy is the first one. Don't tell me that you can't afford therapy. You can. How do I know? Because I typed in on Google free online therapy. Keep looking until you find something that helps you. If you're a codependent, it can be helpful. If you're like a borderline, it might be a little tougher because it's best to have somebody who knows cluster B. But if you look for it, in my experience, you'll find it. 2, coda.org. If you're watching my channel, because you think I have something that you want, and you're not going onto that website, there's nothing I can say. I already know these two guys aren't. My prediction is that they're not going to. It's not my wish for them. I want you guys to get better and get help. I keep doing this. I keep saying this to these guys because the point isn't what they want to make it about, which is what I'm doing to them in their mind. Because let's just say for argument's sake that they're right. Let's say for argument's sake that I am this asshole, condescending, abusive, let's say that all those things are true. So what? go get help. Go do a fourth step on me. Go write a resentment, those 3 columns about what an asshole I am. And take a look at that and then heal. So again, if you're coming onto my channel and you're not doing those things and you want to complain about how horrible things are, and I'm not going to be sympathetic to you. Because if you're walking around with life-threatening cancer and there's a guy who says, I have the answer, I know exactly what to do. You have to stand on your head for 30 minutes a day for 6 months and then you'll be cured. People are like, that's it? For 30 minutes a day, stand on my head in the corner? I'll do it. You come to a codependent who's coming out of a marriage, a relationship, and they're torn to shreds and their life is a mess and they're in huge amounts of pain. And I say, I know the answer. It's going to take some work, but go to a therapist and go to CODA and get a sponsor, work the steps, and you can heal. And they don't want to do that, or they'll give reasons why they can't do it. Because again, the narrative. So it is helpful to find out what the narrative is. What was the role that you were given that you accepted in order to stay safe in the home? I was reading from a therapist who was answering the question, why don't borderlines get better? Something like that. And he said he found something interesting was that in their family of origin, the family uses the borderline as the scapegoat because the drama and the craziness of the borderline's behavior gives them something to talk about. It gives them a way of relating and identifying and helps them, create their own narrative. Makes them feel superior, etc., etc. And so they found out that the borderlines oftentimes will feel, if I got better, then my family gets upset with me, and it's my job to keep the family together by being so, acting so, dysfunctionally. And so that's, assuming that's true or not, I don't know, but I know that that's definitely the case. With everybody, you were given a role. My role was to be the scapegoat. I was the scapegoat for everybody, when it came down to it. I think I shared when I first got into 12-step work when I was 18, I was saving my life by stopping a really, a behavior that was going to kill me. And I was getting my life together. You would have thought that people would have come around me and said, oh, that's really great. I support you in healing and having a better life. And I got harassed. My mother called me a hypocrite. My brother said I was just doing it for the attention. And then my dad just ghosted me, wouldn't even talk to me. I mean, that is so clear that your family of origin, if they're dysfunctional, they don't want you to be healthy because that makes them look bad and feel bad. And also, they don't now have this thing to keep their narrative going about who they are. If you're a codependent in the relationship with the borderline, your narrative is, oh, there's this victim and they're so messed up and I'm the only one that can help them. You don't see the narcissism or the condescension there. You don't understand. If I'm not here to take care of them, nobody will take them to the doctor. Nobody will do this. They won't get their medication. And I have to put up with their craziness. They've been through so much. It's my job to help them. You have to take on that narrative, because if you don't, the only thing left is how worthless you are for not being the caretaker or the scapegoat, whatever it is. So, in terms of being able to change the narrative, if we had the ability, if you can change the narrative in any given moment and act differently, and that's one of the things, a couple of things that I've learned in 12-step. One is doing contrary action. So if you know the narrative, then sometimes you have to do the exact opposite of what the narrative is telling you to do. The case of the woman on the side of the road. Her narrative said she has to get back in the car with the abusive guy. If she understood the concept of this is an opportunity to change my narrative, and so to do that I need to do contrary action, which is what is the exact opposite of every impulse in me right now. Every impulse in me says that I have to go back with him. If I go with these people, I'm betraying him and I'll hurt him and he's going to come after me. But if she took the opposite tack and said, you know what, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do the opposite of what I want. I'm going to get in the car. I'm going to go to the police station and I'm going to file a report. I'm going to get that guy arrested. I'm going to take him to court and he'll go to jail. And I'm going to get myself into a halfway house or whatever it is. And I'm going to get, that would be the opposite. Real easy one is an alcoholic or a drug addict. The opposite in that moment is don't pick up that drink. Don't put that needle in the neck. Just do the opposite of that. Instead of doing that, go to an AA meeting and talk to your sponsor. For the codependent, if you're out of the relationship, everything in you is saying, pick up that phone. Now, maybe you have the ability to not pick up the phone and text or call your borderline ex, but that's as far as it goes. But you need to go completely opposite of that. So the complete opposite of that is not only not pick up the phone, but to block them on every avenue of communication. And then after you've blocked them, or while you're blocking them, or even before, get your ass to a CODA meeting, raise your little virtual hand and say, I'm new here, I need a sponsor to walk me through the steps. You're going to hate doing that, but it's the exact opposite of going on and seeing on social media, what is she doing on Facebook right now? Is she with somebody else? Is that her with that guy? Is she with her ex? Why is she doing that? She said she hated him, and I gave her everything. Why? Yet, what's the exact opposite of that? That's what I was telling Jason to do. Jason wanted me to tell him all about why his borderline ex was hoovering him back, and instead I did the opposite. I said, I'm not going to address that. Who cares? He had the opportunity to do the opposite. So you're right. It doesn't matter why. What is the opposite? Where is that CODA thing again? What is online therapy? That would have been the opposite. Anyway, all right. So I think I've beat this horse to death. I don't see any questions here. I'm happy to take questions if you have any. There's only 9 people on, or at least that's what my thing says. Let me refresh the page. Because it is, after all, New Year's Day, where you guys are. Most people. Yeah, there's only 9 people on there. Kimmy's Cuisine and Homesteading. I think my sister-in-law has BPD. I don't know how to tell her to get help without her raging on me. Well, you can't tell her without her raging on you. She's your sister-in-law. So, what is that? Your sister, your brother's wife? Your brother, it's probably none of your business. I don't know the exact. I mean, the thing about recovery is that they got to want it. The only power that we have, and you're removed from it a little bit, so it's not as important for you, but I don't know what she's putting you through. But the only responsibility we have is to just go no contact. Because the assumption is telling her to get help is going to change things. And unfortunately, it's not. Borderline personality disorder is a mental illness. And as I'm willing to change my mind about this, but from what I've seen, it takes at least 8 to 10 years of intense therapy with the borderline who is seeking therapy before they actually start to heal. And by heal, I mean having the ability to do what I'm talking about, take contrary action. They have to learn methods of how to have all of their borderline episodes and not take it out on other people, and in fact stay in relationships, and that takes a lot of therapy and a lot of work. So if you're thinking that if you could just tell your sister-in-law she needs to go to get help, that it's going to save her marriage, it's probably not. So that I'm just being real with you about that. But it's not your business to go talking to anybody about it. If your brother, whoever it is, if your brother comes to you and says, I don't know what to do, my wife this and that, then you can say, you can ask, I think I know what's going on with her. Would you like to know? So when it comes to unsolicited advice, in my experience, that's the only way to do it. When you have advice for somebody and they haven't asked for your advice, you ask them if you can give them advice. Say, hey, I think I have a solution to your problem. Would you like to know what it is? And if they say yes, then you can say, based on, I mean, this has affected me also, and I've looked it up, and I think she might have borderline personality disorder. So, and then tell him you should probably look into that. And if she wants help, she'll ask somebody, and somebody can say, I think I know what might help you. But you're right. If you drive up on your sister-in-law and say, hey, I think you have borderline personality disorder, there's a very good chance you're right. She's going to rage at you. But it's none of your business. I mean, if you live with her and, the bottom line is this, you just got to get away. You've got to limit your interaction. If your husband, or if her husband, your brother, I'm assuming, gets upset with you and starts saying, why aren't you spending time with my crazy wife? You're going to say, she's really destructive to me, and I can't have anything to do with her. I'm not going to. Now, then your brother's going to want to protect her, probably, and he's going to start raging at you, so both of them will rage at you. But there's nothing you can do about that. Your brother needs help as well. He's a codependent. They're in it together because they both have issues. I don't know you, Kimmy, but I'm willing to bet your family has some dysfunction, right? I could be wrong. But in any case, bottom line is, Kimmy, the only thing you have responsibility over is yourself. And since you can't change her and giving her any advice isn't going to change anything because it's a mental illness, then you need to distance yourself for your own health and your own safety. If they come asking, then you can share. Other than that, you're just going to have to let them deal with it. And maybe get some counseling yourself. Maybe you need to get some counseling on how to distance yourself, how to create boundaries, and how not to be pulled into their drama. All right, I don't see any other comments or questions, right? Okay, so I guess that's it for me. All right, what if children are involved? What do you mean? Are they your children? Oh, that's Lydia. That's another one. Divorced my BPD 2 months ago and they are with me now. Your children are with you? It really helps if you flesh out the whole question. I'm still not getting the whole context here. So I divorced my BPD 2 months ago and they are with me now. Do you mean that your children are with you now? Or that the husband and the children? I'm just going to go based on what I can see here. So I'm assuming what you're saying is that you divorced your BPD husband and you took the children. And then you're asking, what if children are involved? Well, if the person has untreated borderline personality disorder, they are by definition toxic and abusive. I mean, you didn't divorce because he was a loving, nurturing partner, right? So unfortunately, because you've chosen to have clearly more than one child with a borderline, your kids have already been damaged to some degree. I don't know what that is, but they're going to need help. So the sooner you can get them into therapy, the better. My suggestion would be to not only get into therapy, you and your children, immediately, so that you can do whatever, reverse whatever damage. I mean, the thing is that that's where borderlines come from. They come from, there's a borderline parent. Borderline parents create borderline children. So that's what I mean. You got to get your kids into therapy. I'm not trying to make things, but it's just, you got 3 years to get it right. And if there's been damage in those first 3 years, that damage is going to show up for the rest of their lives. So you need to get your ass and their ass to a therapist ASAP, somebody who knows about cluster B personality disorders. And then my suggestion would be to get a lawyer, find out exactly what your rights are, and then do everything in your power to limit, if not eliminate, the borderlines access to your kids, because he can't help it. He's going to be abusive. He doesn't want to be. Maybe he loves his kids. He may not try to be, but he's abusive. It's just the nature of the illness. And it's not a judgment against them. It's just a fact. It's like, if somebody has a communicable disease, you have to stay away. Social distance. You have to stay away if you don't want to get it. So that's what I would do. If he's in therapy, right, then you can make that, I don't know, can you make that part of the thing? He has to be in therapy for 5 years before I'll let you see the kids? I don't know. You can only see the kids, but you can see them in the therapist's office. I mean, something like that. You got to have somebody there protecting the kids. You can't just let those kids be with an untreated toxic borderline. You can't. This is just my opinion. I'm not, bear in mind, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and I'm not a lawyer. I'm just giving you my opinion. But that's my opinion, is to seek out competent advice from a therapist and from a lawyer. And please don't tell me you can't afford it, because you have a responsibility. You chose to have more than one child with a borderline. So you have a responsibility. You can't afford it, you figure out a way. It's your responsibility. I mean, if you didn't have kids, I wouldn't be as putting much pressure on you. I would be telling you, well, you need to go get some help. But you have kids, so you have to do what you can to reverse the damage, if that's even possible. You have to protect them. And you can't let your guilt or anything allow you to let him back in. Can't do it. That's why I said get a lawyer and a therapist. Okay, and ask them. That's my opinion. So I would ask a therapist and I would ask a lawyer, and I would ask them both what you can do to protect your children. And you need to heal as well, obviously, because you were with them. So for your kids, again, you need to heal, because being codependent can be enough destruction to mess up a kid for the rest of their life. So you need to go and do those 3 things: therapy, Codependence Anonymous, or any of the 12-step groups. I don't care which one it is. And then have some kind of meditative practice on a daily basis. You have to be the example for your kids. You have to at least be the example if you've got a daughter, I guess it's son, it doesn't matter, where they can remember, yeah, I remember my mom left my dad and she got herself together, and and that's always stuck with me. But if you don't, and you knuckle under and you let them back in, and you, out of guilt, let them do their thing, and you don't get help, and you're part of the craziness, and or you end up with another abusive, alcoholic, drug addict, codependent, narcissist, or borderline, then that's going to be what your kids remember. And you're going to be teaching them what to do in their lives. So you have to really turn things around, because there are kids involved. So I put you on a higher pedestal. You have to work that much harder, because you have to be that example for the kids. And they're probably not, I don't know, I can imagine they're not going to like it. They're not going to like you getting better. They're not going to like, perhaps, they may not like you taking them away from their dad. You have to be strong. You have to be willing to have them be upset with you and hate you. And take care of yourself and take care of them. All right. So the bottom line is, go get therapy and get a lawyer. All right. Is that it? Nothing else? Okay. Then I guess that's it for today. So Happy New Year. I think it's New Year wherever you guys are. Happy New Year. And I'm going to work on changing my narrative. changing the story about myself, my history of who I am, where I came from. And I'm going to continue to work to change how I view myself and learn how to listen to what other people say about me as opposed to me thrusting upon them how they're supposed to see me. Yeah, I am going to work to be more compassionate and more patient and more real. And I'm going to work to be okay with people not liking me for whatever reason and me not taking it personally. So those are some of the things I'm going to do for this next year. You can make up your own list. All right, that's it, guys. Thank you. Happy New Year. I'll see you all when I see you.